on a day where we're honoring our veterans with really a quality discussion on support. You know, what really is involved? Why would someone want to support, veterans? And how could we better support veterans? So really giving a context, and I couldn't find two more wonderful people who are directly involved in that area. You know, our good friend Dave Snell, who's here every other Wednesday, as well as we've got the honor of having a Major General, Gregg, with us today. And he's got a book out that's very fascinating about his journey. Dave is really got a lot of background and is also involved in helping veterans in so many ways. We got a few initial comments. Great. Here's a new individual, Hanumansa, I guess. Oh, yeah, I know you. You're a doctor. That's right. Thanks for showing up. Haven't seen you in a bit. Hope all's well. And I know you're doing your own live streams. Welcome. The Zoom party host, Omar, is here. Happy last Friday of January 2024. Well, that puts it in perspective for everyone. Thank you, Omar. Omar's just a quality individual who's helping a lot of people, always comes up with his fair share or more. And somebody, again, that you could take advantage of a networking opportunity. We've got Kelle here. Always great to have Kelle here. Kelle is also so involved in supporting veterans, especially with her this exceptional show, The Awesome Journey with Christy Howard, which is at 1 p.m. And, you know, if we want to support veterans, supporting each other, supporting whatever, veterans, women over 50, you know, I think that's where we find the power is not just individual comments or posts, but collaborative efforts, creating an event around something, bringing people together. So I couldn't be more pleased, when you do things and everybody gets value when it's successful, it's worth doing. So Dave, you've got a lot of background in being a veteran and also transitioning. So pleased to have you share so much value with so many people.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I mean, as I always start out with here, I'm always happy to be here, and it's just such a pleasure. But and on that same note, I mean, I have 20 plus years of experience in the Navy as a surface warfare officer and then a cryptologist, which ironically with my naval career, Navy career, I didn't spend as much time at sea probably as I did with the joint services of the Army and the Air Force, Marines being part of the Navy. I kind of lumped them in with us. And a lot of time in the desert between Afghanistan, Iraq, the Middle East in general. And it's given me a broad, understanding of the issues that we go through when we transition from the military. And in particular, as frequent viewers know, and been on Kelle's show, which was a lot of fun as well, mental health is my biggest number one issue with the transition. I also help folks with, understanding what it is to transition from a mentality of being in the military and the jargon that we use and how we write our resumes and our what we call fitness reports or evaluations. It's really translating that to commercial corporate speak so you can transition to a job. So I've got two avenues that I really like to help veterans with personally. And I think, Don, your point of, how can we help veterans is get together and do things, have events. There is I don't want to say a glut, but a lot of opportunity to support veterans. And it's a matter of finding the niche in which you want to help, whether it's mental health, transitioning, or, job searches or loans, from the financial side, and mentally shifting how we approach these things. Because in the military, I bring up financial, we have a guaranteed check every month. We know we're going to get it. Well, we lose that when we go into the corporate world. You can be replaced at almost any time. So finding your niche of where you want to support, and then finding groups that do that, and then getting involved in, it's a little disheartening on one hand, but a success of the all volunteer force that really, was it less than 1% of our nation has military experience. So it's tough to really relate unless you've been there. So I think being involved early with these groups helps you make that connection to our military. I've kind of gone on a bit here.
I think that's terrific because most people don't know. And that's the reason most people don't get involved or don't do. And, I'm so honored to have Kelle with us because she has dedicated so much time with Christy Howard in the awesome journey. And, that's a way to help, is to support people who are just talking, just showing up, right? I mean, a lot of people, when they think, oh, it's a charity, I got to write a big check or something else. Sometimes it's just being someone at the reception area, right?
Yeah.
Just helping unload, set up some chairs. I mean, it's the little things that can make a big difference if a lot of people collaboratively work on it and organize with it. So, Kelle, love to hear what your experience with the Awesome Journey and helping veterans and what the insights you've gained from supporting veterans.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're tuning in from. And Dave, we didn't get to chat before we came on because we were dealing with technical stuff. I was so blessed to be here with you again. It's been a while since we've chatted.
Always a
Yeah, so
pleasure.
thank you. But I mean, it's such an important topic, and to be quite honest, Christy and I moved into this lane pretty much organically. We both are huge supporters of our veterans and sorry, Greg's calling me again. Supporters of our veterans and first responders. Because we kind of tend to forget that just because they're the heroes or labeled the heroes doesn't mean sometimes that they need to be rescuing themselves for all the things that they go through. And yes, the insight that I have gained through all of these conversations has been incredible. Because the vulnerability, and Christy and I were blessed to have both Dave and Gregg on our show, and being able to share their stories from such a vulnerable place um, is a beautiful, brave thing to do because it helps so many people. And this conversation needs to be just a regular conversation. The stigma behind mental health, and particularly men's mental health, it needs to just go away. And I love how Dave speaks of it because mental health is just part of our health. It has nothing to do with, like, it doesn't belong in its own bucket. It's part of our overall health. And so I just think it's an important conversation because I think specifically, since 2020, people's mental health issues have been exacerbated in so many ways, whether it's by layoffs, not being able to get hired, um, and just being isolated, and loneliness is a big epidemic at the moment. And the other thing that really hits home with me is knowing that our veteran suicide rate has skyrocketed, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, it really, really is. And knowing how they struggle just to get the help they need, and in the battle sometimes it is just for them to receive the help that they need. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been an eye opener, and I just encourage everyone. And I will say, doing live stream in general, that's what it's helped me with, is learning about things. I had no clue about all the things associated with bipolarness. Um, I had a preconceived notion from the things that I heard. But then once you start hearing about it from people who have gone through it, I should say, who have been diagnosed with it, whether it's bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, and understanding those differences. Um, so I just think it's important to continue to educate ourselves and open our minds, because I think people tend to turn away from things that scare them. They don't like what they don't know. And bipolar sounds scary. Mental health to some people sounds scary. And it's not, y'all. I mean, it just is. Understand people and what the situation is. So I'm blessed that I have the opportunity to talk to such incredible people who share their amazing stories. And I'm so bummed that we're having difficulty with Gregg. And I will, I do have his book here, so I will be sure that we hold this up a couple times.
I got a feeling Greg will be with us. Um, I think I just mentioned he could log on with his iPhone too. So that
Yeah,
might,
that's what he's trying to do.
yeah. And his son's helping him now. So I
But
think with all the heads on this initiative, we'll get it done. And I think, teamwork is everything. But,
amen.
Craig had so much experience talking, interacting, understanding that when people look at us, they think we're the teachers, and we're actually the better students, because where would I have the opportunity to get to know a retired uh, major general, right?
Right.
And not just me knowing him, but knowing what he's about, knowing what he does. You can shake hands, get autographs, and buddy with someone, but is it tangible? And is it fortifying your reach and your association with the people? So you're bringing value through you from someone else.
Yeah.
Because one person by themselves will exhaust themselves and bore everybody after a certain point. But it's really the curiosity factor that they want to know everybody's story. And I think, we talk about it all the time. If people just tell their story in an authentic, sincere way, they're 99% of the way above the people who are just salesy, scammy. I mean, and they don't even know it. That's the problem. They think they're almost there and they're so far away. But let's go to the audience. We've got a great audience today. I promoted it. I'm finding ways to promote events, and actually everybody who's a speaker has access to inviting people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go through your whole network and just keep checking them off up to 1,000
Yep.
and make people aware. I never could get to 1,000. Dr. Rouse here, thank you for being here. We talked about Omar. Omar's just a great individual. Nikita's here, new name. Great to have you. Love to be part of the team. We've got Radhadev, who's from India, always going out and saying the same two things, but they're great things. Good morning, and wonderful to join today's session. So nice to have a template approach like that. MD's here, wonderful to join today's session. Haven't seen you in a while, but it's great to see you. Dr. Rao says they deserve extra support for sure. Dennis Dennis, I can't say anymore. If you know Dennis, there's nothing to say. Wonderful to see and hear you three, but heading into live in-person meetings, and great. Nice to see you going live. So you all great break for me to, okay, well, double appreciation. And if you're on, but good luck and tell us how it went, because I think everybody should be in the game. There's no restriction for getting on the field. Harry, did you hear about the mosaic artist lost his mind? He literally fell to pieces. I don't know. Every day you must have something going to come up with a joke like that. I train the people with suicidal tendencies to get out of their mindset by knowing their true nature. So well, I know Dr. Rao does a lot of live streaming, has his own show. I've talked to him many times in the past. So it's very fascinating. The veterans group that I am in, we got to hear from the general of that book. Good morning, Don. The other guests. Well, great. And you feel free to share your experience as a veteran, Carrie, or what support means to you, or what support should mean to other people. Kelly?
I just kind of wanted to interject one of the things, and then I want to hear from Dave. Is the other thing that I've learned over just the last year of doing all this and the conversations is I have a different point of view of suicide. And not that I had a negative one, but there's times like, God, that seems so selfish and how painful for all those left behind. But having these conversations, every single one of them, and I'll even err on the side of caution, say 95% of them but all of them, when they were in the point of whether they were acting it out or thinking it out, because those are two different things, is they thought they were doing everybody a favor. And that's the part that hurts, because it's like they think that that's what they deserve. They feel like they're relieving everyone else of their burden. And I implore everyone to think about that, because it should change how you feel about people who have been in that place, and then just have such compassion and empathy, because it's a lot more common than you think it is. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and I'll hand it over to you, Dave.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on that. As someone who has attempted, there's, when I attempted, there was a term of a genuine attempt versus a gesture.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that the mental health community has kind of gotten rid of that. Maybe they haven't, but the docs I've talked to have. And the distinction was, you did something to which there was no recovery. That's an attempt.
Yeah.
If you had not taken your own action, it would have succeeded, or someone had not intervened. And a gesture was something a little bit different, where the intent was there, but the action was not enough to kill you. And to me, it didn't matter. Let's take a step back and go, what's my intent? My intent either way was to die.
Yeah.
There's, God, I'm finding this harder to talk about. I don't know why. There is a point where you regret it, no matter where you are. There's a guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived, and there's only been like 20 of those folks, and they all said the same thing. And I related to this guy very quickly: was you regret it. There's a point of regret, and if you've gestured or attempted, it's too late, maybe. Maybe.
And don't you think part of that, though, is society and just the shame factor?
No, I mean that you regret that you attempted.
Yeah,
that you want to live.
That's what I'm saying, and the shame that goes along with that.
Yeah,
with
you want to live. The point that you make, there was a point you made there, and I just blanked. Oh crap! I'm sorry. Anyway, when we go through, here's Greg. When we go through this whole process of identifying what it is that drove us to it, and if it's, whether it's I wanted to ease my own pain, or everybody else would, that's the point I was getting at, or everybody else would be better off without me.
Yeah.
I did not personally have people would be better off without me. For me, it was, I want to stop the pain that I feel.
Yeah.
And the pain that I'm going through. I was and was it selfish of me? I don't know. I think saying that it's selfish means that it's sometimes a willful act. Sometimes it's just the disease gets to you where you just can't take it anymore. And it's not about somebody else's feelings. It's about what you are going through.
Yeah. And
when we get to that point, it's not that we don't care about the people around us. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted out, and I saw no escape valve. And it wasn't until, in my case, my attempt, I hit that point where I said, I don't want to really go through with this. I regret it. I actually walked 200 yards down to the emergency room on the Yokosuka Naval Base and said, you guys need to help me. I tried to kill myself. And then I got the help I needed. And it took many, many years to get the final help that I think succeeded in solving a lot of my problems, not even solving, but moving me beyond them. That really got me to the point where I am today, where I can talk openly about it, help other veterans who are going through it or have been through it or are looking for that escape valve. And I know, General, you're here with us. I don't want to keep going.
Let me introduce
yes.
Our distinguished guest today. We're honored to have General Gregg Martin with us. And just kidding with Kelly, how just like military, we worked as a team and got everybody on at the same time today. And, Gregg's new to this show, so it'd be great if Gregg spent a little bit providing some context. And really, the key to the show is value add to the audience to justify their time, effort, and thought today, that they can take something and learn from it, or take something and continue to let it ripple through their networks, because this is really a community of influencers and people who are into identifying how better to use their influence and supporting others and people and making people aware. So, General, take it away.
Hey, well, thanks a lot. It's great to be with everybody. Sorry I came on late. So my story is one of great success and achievement for pretty much my whole life. I found out in doing the research for my book called Bipolar General that I had a hyperthymic personality, which means my brain produced and distributed excess amounts of dopamine, endorphins, and other powerful biochemicals. And what it did is it put me into a state of near continuous mild mania, which increased my energy, drive, enthusiasm, extroversion, positivity, problem-solving skills, etc. And that's a wonderful advantage to have. So I was like the superstar in high school. I was at West Point, Ranger School, junior officer. But the problem with hyperthymia is it inches and goes little by little towards real mania, real bipolar disorder. So as I moved up the bipolar spectrum, I started getting closer and closer to onset. And according to the VA and the Army Medical Department, my onset of bipolar disorder was in the Iraq War in 2003. And so what happened was all the pressure and the thrill and the euphoria and the ecstasy of combat leading, about 10,000 troops. When we attacked across the border from Kuwait to Iraq, I suddenly felt like Superman. I felt bulletproof, fearless, was all over the battlefield, full of energy, didn't need to sleep. And so I went from the way I had been to, on steroids. And that continued for most of the year in Iraq. But over the next 12 years, I started cycling into lower lows. I started falling into depression and higher levels of mania. And that went on for a dozen years, unrecognized, undiagnosed, until 2014, when I was president of National Defense University, working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I went into full-blown mania, essentially a state of madness, insanity, and I lost my mind, and my behavior was completely out of control. So at that point, the chairman called me in and said, "Gregg, I love you like a brother," gave me a big hug, said, "I give you an A+ for your work, but your time at National Defense University is over. You have until 5 p.m. to resign or you're fired. And I'm ordering you to get a psychiatric evaluation this week." And so I did. I got the psych evals, and I had gotten 3 when I was depressed in earlier years, and all 3 times the doc said, "You're fine," but I wasn't fine. And then I got 3 more when I was manic, and they said, "You're fine," but I wasn't fine. Then I crashed into hopeless, crippling depression, terrifying psychosis, and then was finally diagnosed properly with bipolar type 1. But then I went from bad to worse, retired from the Army, and ended up in a VA hospital inpatient clinic, which was really good. It was really just what I needed. Big help. But it took months longer to get the right medication, which for me was lithium and a couple of other medications that stabilized my brain chemistry and essentially got me on the right track. My symptoms vanished, and I started my road to recovery 7.5 years ago. And since then, I've rebuilt my life, my marriage, and I've got a new purpose mission statement, which is sharing my bipolar story to help stop the stigma, promote recovery, and save lives. And I do it through speaking, writing, and conferring. So life is wonderful.
Love that. And I mean, there's so many things, and I'm so glad you made it on here today, Gregg. Is just to reiterate a couple of points in your story there, because that was truly the Reader's Digest version. But when you were fired, essentially, you actually were like, oh, well, this is great because I'm so grandiose and I need to do greater things for God. Like I've outgrown here. I've done my purpose here. It wasn't like you were bummed. And then secondarily, the being misdiagnosed, and this was one of the so many things that are such a takeaway, but that definitely made me go, oh my gosh, because you were achieving such greatness that people were like, can't be no way that you're depressed. That it was seen because you're achieving, there can't be anything wrong, and that was part of the prolonged diagnosis. So those were kind of the 2 points out of that I just wanted to reiterate. And P.S. I do think that you were asked by God to do greater things. Just my perspective of what you do now is incredible.
Yeah, Kelly, first off, when the chairman fired me, I said, thank you, chairman. This is great news because God put me at NDU to do great things, and now he's going to put me somewhere else to do even greater things. And I was right, paradoxically, 10 years later. And so what were the other things you mentioned?
The other one about the being misdiagnosed, going along with the whole fact of, you were achieving. So it was like, there's no way that there can be anything wrong because you're doing great things.
Right. The mask of success hid the fact that I had a very sick brain with a serious mental illness. So because I was successful and high ranking and, successful combat leader, they couldn't see past this exterior veneer. And I kept getting promoted and put on one job after another. And the other aspect of not being able to see it was people around me, thousands of them, they didn't know what the symptoms of bipolar looked like. They weren't trained, so they didn't know. And the other thing is they liked me because I was fun to be around. They liked being in my command. It was exciting. It was fun. We accomplished big things. So they were worried. They didn't want to see me get fired because they liked having me as their boss. So those are a few other things.
Dave?
Yeah, I'd like to make a little bit of a different angle to this. With my experience, as I think I expressed to the general when I met him last year, was, and I've talked to Kelly about as well, is, for me, it was, okay, we're going to diagnose you, we're going to give you some meds, and we'll just call it good. And if we can get you back to the fit to fight, and that's it. That's our goal. We're here to get you ready to fight the wars and the battles that we need you to be there to do. But we never really got to the diagnoses. In my case, I was depressed. I'd go to therapy for a little bit. Okay. We touch on the traumas that I had, service related or not, and go, okay, well, how are you feeling? Well, I think I'm an 8.5 out of 10. That's good enough. You're fit to fight. Let's put you out to the fleet again. Okay, well, then I'm done. Then I start to decline again. Oh, I'm depressed again. Now we're going to get you. Oh, you're fit to. You're at that 85%, whatever number. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. It wasn't really the military medicine at the time, and I'm talking almost 15, 20 years ago, was not there to really get to the root of the cause of the problem and say, like the general said, they weren't trained to identify these deeper issues. And I think we're finding that through all the combat and all the high op tempo, operations tempo that we've been putting our men and women through, the struggles are getting bigger. So they have to learn to identify these things. And maybe, I know my experience is unique. The general has his unique experience. We all have our unique experiences. That's just my take on what I saw happening through my time. It was probably about 12 of my 20 years plus experiencing these ups and downs. And hey, I checked the block, he got fixed. And you got to check the block, he's fixed. He's ready to go back. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, and wasn't part of yours too was the lack of understanding, because I'm not blaming anybody, but it wasn't part of the protocol, because part of what exacerbated your situation too was that you were getting grief from the higher up when you told them about your situation. So you were kind of I don't want to say teased or any of those things, but it was looked down upon, and it was vocalized towards you for admitting like, hey, here's my situation.
Oh, absolutely. And for those who haven't seen me on before or heard, I mean, yes, I told two of my commanding officers, hey, I'm on antidepressants, or I'm depressed, or I have this diagnosis. And it was, well, we need to get you checked out further. I can't let you have your clearance. I need to get you off my ship. In one case, the clearance was when I was at the National Security Agency, where, it was almost because of their attitude that I said, hey, I'm going to get better and I'm going to outperform everybody and show you that I can do what I can. And when I was at the National Security Agency, I did, we did 3 to 4 month pumps in the desert. I did 4 of them in a row. Guys were coming home for, a year in between. And I just said, no, I just want to get going. But the stigma, as Kelle and I were talking about earlier, is really still there, but I think we're starting to break through it, especially with veterans. I'm hoping it's getting there.
Well, I think that what we're all plugging into is awareness,
Yeah.
And the more awareness on the medical side, on the military side, on the community side makes all the difference. But let's get back to our lovely audience. Beverly says, yeah, I learned that yesterday. Thank you for your amazing. Well, thank you. Carrie's here. I was 16 when my mom exited life with a gun to her head. Then I went into the Navy at 19 with this PTSD. Now 51, I can talk about it. I have had lots of support and now can advocate for myself as well. And that's so important. And that's why the audience is where it's at. Because you're right, we all have different experiences one way or another. I had a family member who was successful, a veteran. And, in one way, there was a relief for that person because they were disabled, had severe pain. And, you relate to how much is how much. Right. And so every situation's different. It's a matter of being aware and listening. I think that's the key because too many people come in with judgment right at the bat. Or someone says, I'm having a hard time. Well, you're weak. Strengthen up. Nothing is that simple. If it was, it wouldn't be a bigger issue. So moving on to Dr. Rao, the ancient, and thank you, Carrie, for sharing that. That's so important. The ancient perspective, and they'll help many of my patients. Everybody has a different orientation, a perspective, and what works. I think that's the key. Hello, okay. Beverly comes back with an empowering story that's inspiring for us all. So many people in all walks of life suffer from bipolar disorder. Beverly's a therapist up in Montreal, and it's hard to find the right medical cocktail. When you're manic, you can be extraordinary. And Beverly has her show every Tuesday with me here, Women's Empowerment, which is a huge area too, that needs a lot more awareness and support. Yep, the goal is to get you back into the field if it's military. If it's in the workplace, it's about insurance. Gregg, this is such an important subject, and you're at the forefront of making people aware. How do you do that? I know you wrote a book. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it and what people could benefit from reading it.
So the way that I do it is 7 years ago when I started my journey to recovery, I realized that in order to be healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, I needed a mission. And in the military, I had a mission. It was, do the Army mission, period. It was handed to me. But I found that I was sort of moving sideways because I didn't have that focus. And so I took a while and I thought about really hard, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What really matters? How can I serve a cause bigger than myself, etc. And suddenly the mission just came to me. I was staring at it in my mirror. The mission was me. because I had undergone this, atrocious experience of bipolar disorder, which I would never wish on anyone. I didn't want it, but it wanted me. And I said, I can keep this hidden or I can keep it quiet, but what good is that? That's not going to do the world or people any good at all if I don't, tell my story. And that's one of the ethos of at least the Army, and I think the entire military, is when you go through a tough experience, you do an after action review and you talk about what went right, what went wrong, and what can we learn from the situation. So I said, my mission, my purpose in life is going to be sharing my bipolar story to help stop the stigma, promote recovery, and save lives. And the way I do that is through speaking like this, writing, like, I've published about 20 articles that are on the website, and writing my book, which was really kind of the crowning achievement. And then I also confer. Lots of people want to talk to me, and, we do Zooms, we talk on the phone, and we just discuss aspects of mental health and bipolar disorder. So, that's how I do it. And I think one of the main focuses is to stop the stigma, because stigma is based on fear and ignorance. And it's the one big thing that keeps people getting. And so the one big bogeyman in the room is based on fear and ignorance. So I try to talk about it and normalize the conversation, because there's no stigma around cancer, diabetes, or heart disease, and neither should there be around mental health, mental illness, or brain disorders. They're real because they're inside the human brain. And if people have really two things, and if you do nothing, there's a very good possibility to end up with in your career in end up in prison and then dead. Path that you're choosing if you do nothing. But if you do something, given the level of medicalism, there's a very good chance you can have a happy, healthy purpose. So that's kind of how I do it.
Well, I think that's terrific. And, our saying around here for a long time is, if you can't do it, could we do it? Right? So there are people out there ready, willing, and able to help. And it's really just keeping that connection strong, because I know even here, me, Kelly, and Harvey specifically, we've never turned down a sincere call from anybody to discuss anything. Right? So there's so many people who want to help. You have to know that you need help, and that help is available, and you can get value from it. And there's that saying, if the pain of holding on is greater than the fear of letting go, you let go. And I think when people get to that point, say, well, what do I got to lose by getting help? I'm already in this. And I know the challenge with that is not everybody's thinking clearly like that.
Yeah.
Or
I'm going to say, and that's that. Well, one other thing that we talk about a lot is when people that we care about, or in our community, our family, people we love, ask for help, we can't say fast enough, oh my gosh, what can I do to help you? But when we're in the position of needing help, we're terrible at asking for help. And I do believe part of it is that weakness and just shame that comes from it, instead of it being a strength to recognize, hey, I need some help here. And I just kind of wanted to go into maybe one other thing. Well, there's so many things, but Gregg, is because there's a difference between bipolar 1, bipolar 2. I wasn't aware of this until I was having the conversation with you, and also Michael Vanzetta, who he has it, and he was diagnosed in 2019, which is quite recent. And he was told at his work, do not tell HR, because you will likely lose your job, because it will make people feel uncomfortable. I was like, seriously, people, that is so, and it's what you just were saying about fear and ignorance, Gregg, but the difference of 1 and 2, and then maybe a little bit about when you're talking about psychosis and the period of time that you spent in your bipolar hell, what that is like.
So the differences between the levels of bipolar disorder are described in great detail in
Oop, he's freezing a little bit here
A little freeze.
in the book. And we'll include the link to his book, but and I have it sitting here just too.
If I can jump in while the general is frozen. I mean, I connected with the general last year. I'd read his original story back in 2014. And I think he and I are on the same mission, break that stigma as we are, Kelly and Don with having calls like this. And, for me, I have a lot of friends. I did a lot of work with special operations community and the naval special warfare a little bit. Again, I had more joint experience in my career, but I was sitting with a great mate of mine who I said, look, who am I to tell my story? What is it? Just Joe Blow here, who doesn't have much of an experience in the sense of I wasn't shot at every day, in the sense I wasn't kicking down doors and killing people directly. And my buddy looked at me, and it was the most prescient thing that ever hit me was, that's exactly why you need to talk, Dave. Because everybody looks at guys like, and the general pointed out, I'm a general and I have this great career, or I'm a Navy SEAL. And what pedestal have we put Navy SEALs on? Rightly so, don't get me wrong. They do a lot of great stuff, and considering the two we just lost 2 weeks ago, he said everybody puts everybody up on a pedestal of these guys don't seek the help, and we've lost a number. Mike Day, in particular, comes to mind. If they're strong enough and they went through what I did and they don't seek help, why should I? Yeah. Well, we're losing everybody. It doesn't discriminate. No. Whether you're a SEAL or an E1 who just does administration back in the rear, everybody can be affected and is affected by mental fitness, mental health issues. It doesn't discriminate. Your traumas are relative to your personal experience, and how you respond to that is genetic and conditional based on your surroundings. So I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn lately. Comparison is the evil that kills future actions. Yeah, stop comparing yourself.
That's right.
You're going through it, not somebody else. And if we can't express what's going on within us to friends and family, are they really people we want to be around? They're holding you back. It's a similar but separate issue to me, because I don't want to be around people professionally if they're holding me back. Why would I do that with my own mental health? Yeah. The stigma
oops, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, the stigma is a big piece of it. And, I'm not a macho guy, yet in the military, you get a lot of machismo from men and women. We just I want to be tough and I don't want to give in. And I hid my suicide attempt for many years because I changed communities. People didn't really know why I transferred into it. And just over time, I finally came clean with, I'm really sick of this. Oh, he's got mental health, so we'll put him over in the corner. And I said, no, he's going to come with us and we're going to help him. Yeah. And why do you care? Well, I've been through this. Oh, you have? I didn't realize that. And that started to open my mind that I needed to start sharing this. And it took me 10 more years to really get to where I am here. And I hope, just like the general said, the mission statement I've got, my why, my meaning, my purpose is to help others break that stigma, get beyond, do the things like movement. Kelly and Don have heard me talk about my movement, mind, meditation, and meaning. The general alluded to, we have a mission in the military. We also have purpose for working out. We're driven to be fit physically. We have a mission. We have a purpose. So what is our drive when we leave the military? As we talk about veteran support outside transition, they've lost it. So give them a purpose, a meaning, a why will help drive away from the mental health issues, I think.
Okay. Well, I think we're really bringing a lot of value. One thing I'd like to add is we're specific to veterans support, but when you're talking suicide, all of this advice is beneficial to people who are doing it because of relationships or finance or whatever. But
Oh,
what the clear message I'm getting is a lot of people have been living a false image and they don't want to destroy that, right? But the closer you can align to your true self, the more healthy you'll be. When you're living a double life or a triple life and you're hiding stuff from people and being in denial, you're going the wrong direction. But with that, let's get back to Beverly's comment. Thank you. Sharing the bipolar story is so important. Here in Canada, we have Bell Let's Talk Day. Just like addiction, it's important to talk about it. It's not a shame. It's a new typical brain. Once again, thank you. And then Beverly comes back with even worse, Kelle, is bipolar 3.
mm,
It's really hard to diagnose, and medication does not work. These
oh,
amazing people pass through the cracks, but they don't hit real mania, but they suffer. The more we talk, all this, the better for all of us. And when I think the general makes a strong point, when you can put this on the same power as any other organ. We're talking about the brain, right? If we're talking about kidneys or liver or heart or anything like that, that is just accepted. But it seems like because you think with your brain, you have a chance to control it instead of it controlling you. And then if you dig down to the next level of chemicals and interactions and things change all the time, it almost makes sense to be able to check yourself for yourself,
mm-hmm.
to have people who are there. So, and the stronger you are, the longer you can hold on, right? And maintain that unpleasant, uncomfortable situation. But the sooner you can identify it and get smart about it, right? Read up on it, watch the videos, Google it. And after a while, you're conversational and you're not alone. And I think in most cases, people who succeed, because I remember David Spade, a comic, his cousin Kate Spade committed suicide. And everybody thought she had it all. She had a huge company, great family, whatever. And when they asked him, what do you think? And he said, I know Kate. If she would have 5 more minutes, this would have never happened.
Regret.
Or just impulse, right?
Yeah.
If she would have had 5 more minutes, things would have settled for her.
And I think that's another, point to go off on, and we say this a lot too, is check on people. When you don't hear from them for a while, and even those that are on, LinkedIn or other platforms that you're social on, you can notice when people, and I've had a few friends that have been this way, and all of a sudden they're not on anymore. And I'll just reach out and send them a message. Hey, haven't seen you in a while, just checking in. Because that is a text message that I know from someone who shared their story. He was in his truck with a gun in the position where he wanted to be, and was ready to pull the trigger. And a text message came through that grabbed his attention and changed the course. Oh, yes.
Is that the guy?
No, it is
Oh,
not. But it sounds like he has the same one. It isn't. But it's just the point of those tiny little things that we can do aren't tiny. Because I mean, again, it's just when you're in those dark places, it makes it harder to reach out sometimes. And just having an understanding and not judging. And I think that's such an important thing, because you're right. Comparison is such a horrible thing, and social media has brought that more to the forefront, in my opinion. But, I can say, as an example, my family, we all lost my father the same tragic way. We all went through a totally different recovery process or grieving process, because we all saw it from a different perspective and a different angle. And that's how it is for all of us. Just because we have similar experiences doesn't mean that the way I'm dealing with it is wrong because someone else did it a different way or they got through it faster. Your way is always right. You just have to allow yourself the grace to go through it. So I just think that's an important point. And then since we do have you back, Greg, if maybe you wanted to talk about a little bit, because one of the things with you about getting the proper medication, like it took a long time, and it was with your family, your wife, I believe specifically, helping push through, saying, "You all, this is not working for my husband. Like you've got to do something different."
Exactly. Yeah, the key, both my diagnosis and in the diagnosis, when I crawled, I clawed my way back, Walter Reed to the and said, "Hey doc, I am really, really sick. There's something with what it is, but I need help." And, so they me, and at that point, really significant depression and psychosis. Comment the good doctors did is one of the information. So they were interested in what she done. She said, "Hey, I think seemed that little gave them, they said bipolar type 1." And then later, I really continued terrible depression, function, which I described, but I think, and she really got a hold of my doc. This isn't a conversation, and he talked about lithium with its side effects, and so we decided to go. In a week, all my symptoms went away. I felt great. I had energy. And I didn't do the kind of stuff I always like to do. Lithium is a remarkable medication, and as it's a salt out of the earth. And so what it did a ceiling against my mania. So the mania could only go so high, and then a floor against the depression. So the depression couldn't keep going down into rock bottom. And so it really worked well for me. And my wife was key.
God bless her. And for those of you that maybe didn't hear part of that, is because he was cutting out a little bit, is just the depression and the psychosis. And the psychosis was brutal from where he lived, and referred to it as bipolar hell. And it sounds horrible, and he does write about it in his book. But the fact that his wife kept pushing and saying, "Hey, this still isn't working," and just an important factor for sure. So, excuse me. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I think that, this has been a fabulous show because, it is so easy to appreciate and understand from people who have gone through it and understand what it is to go through it. There's a lot of people giving advice that never experienced anything. They're just out there sharing what they think. And it's the peer-to-peer where the value is.
Mm-hmm.
In Gregg's case, he had his wife. If you have a brother, if you have a friend who will just do a little bit more to help you do a little bit more, not do it for you, but hey, let me take you to the hospital, or let me make that appointment that you've been holding off on. I mean, just the little things. And, people usually stick around if they're, especially if they're honorable, if they feel obligated to someone, right? I can't let this person down, and sometimes you live for things bigger than yourself to allow yourself to be with yourself until you can get help. And I think the other element, there are no absolutes, right? It's all a matter of degree, and how do you handle those degrees, and when do you get the straw that breaks the camel back, or the incident, or the event. But I think when there's hope, there's opportunity, right? And if people, again, compare each other against people who said, hey, If he could do it, why can't I? If lithium worked for that person, maybe it could work for me. And even a maybe is enough to create enough curiosity to stick around to see it through. And it's one step at a time. Some people try to eat an elephant in one bite. When it's just get comfortable, get a little more comfortable, and get support. And it could be anywhere. Wherever there's people, it's a better place than being by yourself. Go to a library, go to a church, go to a music festival, whatever it is, you'll start focusing on the outside. And like Gregg said, he was able to start getting back to himself and doing outside activities and feeling valuable. And there's something to reclaiming yourself that makes you appreciate it more than you would have if you didn't go through the struggle, right? When you get through the struggle, you thank the struggle, right? When you're just getting through it, you hate the struggle because you know it's ahead of you. But, as long as you've been through enough, and I mean, in Gregg's case and Dave's case, just being in the military prepares you for more things than most people would ever understand. And it makes everybody a little bit more resilient and open to change. So we're getting to the end. General, final thoughts on the show and what we're able to bring value today?
Yeah, great show. Appreciate being on with the team. I think we need to normalize the conversation or find out a few resources I think are really beneficial. Next year called Brainstorm is really a treasure trove of information that is already being used in medical school, and it's being translated to Chinese and Portuguese, at least to name a few.
Great.
There's a company, it's called Grit Hope, RITE.com. They've been in business about 20 years. They do a lot of work on mental health for the VA, hospitals, universities, etc. And then there's a very high-tech device it's called BIAFFECT that uses a standard board that can monitor mood fluctuations up and down, basically monitor, and then you can proactive actions to help your mood state. So those are just a few resources that I've come across recently.
Well, thank you. And feel free to put all those links in the comments today so other people can access them. And, you bring so much hope, Gregg, to so many people. And you're right. You were here for a bigger purpose, and it's obviously manifesting it in front of all our eyes. And, what you also have is a fan club here, an honest fan club that will enjoy your success with you and for you and vicariously. So thank you. And Dave, you're getting to be just the veteran around here. What's your final thoughts on the show today?
Yeah, I think just to go down a different path, I think we've come up with two big things here is community and self-introspection. First you have to understand who it is you are and what makes you tick, have a mission, have a reason, and that will drive your day-to-day routine so that you don't go into the depths of the darkness unless something external happens that just drives you so far. And at which point you have to have a strong community, whether that's friends, professionals, coworkers, strangers in a particular, not strangers, but people in your church, in your Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever it is, some group where you can say, I feel comfortable and I can express what's really going on with me and be, the word that I learned the most during the pandemic was, Brene Brown's vulnerability. If you can't feel vulnerable, you are not in the right crowd. So find a way to be able to express yourself, or a place you can express yourself, and that will help minimize or at least limit the negative effects that are happening in your life, in my opinion.
Well, that's great. And, I think everybody's opinion means something, especially when it's given for the benefit of others. And, what I love about these shows, it is so unselfish. It is so value oriented. And with that, there's no more value to this show than Kelle. So, Kelle, so proud to have you and honored to have you with our two fine veterans here today.
Yes, I mean, a complete honor for me. I mean, it's a very rare that I when I'm talking to Don, that I'm like, can I crash that show? I definitely want to be on, because it is such an important topic, and I just, you both are such a gift in sharing your message, because I know it is impacting so many people, and helping people, and it's educating people, and I think that's just so important, because all of us are impacted by mental health in some way, whether it's of our own, a family member, a friend, what have you. But knowledge is power. And I just think if we all understood each other a little bit better sometimes, how much better the world would be. Because I agree with you, when people post on mental health that have no idea what they're talking about and are critics to other things, it's just so offensive. And I do highly recommend getting the General's book, Bipolar General, because it's not just about his story. It does talk about all other types of mental health issues, and connect with both Dave and Gregg for their posts. They share such important information, and and share it with your network, because I think the more that we're educated, the better. I'm just blessed to know you both and be able to call you both friend. And Gregg's going to be out here for a big veteran event in March, so I'm going to be able to see him when he's out here visiting. So I'm super excited about that. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, we'll share all the links in the comments also, so that you can connect with all the things that were mentioned. And until next week, I'll end like I always do. Please go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Well, thank you all. It's been an amazing hour. Goes so quick, we could spend more hours, and that's why we'll be back next week. And actually, Monday's show is the LinkedIn Strategy Show with Kelle and Harvey. Promote and support all the people who are out there trying to help promote and support so much. And that makes it all bigger, better, and faster together. So with that, go on and have a wonderful, safe, enjoyable weekend, and we'll talk again on Monday. Bye.